This is the Neighborhood Food Network call, and we are very honored to have Maria Williford on with us. Hello, Maria. We're very glad to have you here on the Neighborhood Food Network call. This is a call where we are creating national food security one street at a time. We are also creating community connection, health, because we're opting out of GMO and glyphosate sprayed food. And we're bridging the political divide, right? Nobody cares if you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're sharing a bowl of peaches with them that just came off your tree. You're connecting communities. And what we see that you're doing in Raleigh is just beautiful. I'm going to screen share your website right now. This is Maria is from the Raleigh City Farm. And we just love this. Dig where you live. We are a nonprofit urban farm connecting and nourishing our community through regenerative agriculture. We absolutely love this. Look at this beautiful farm. And you have a farm share. You can pay what you want at the farm stand, where over 50% of the produce with local nonprofits it's shared with over 50%. You share over 50% of the produce with local nonprofits that address food insecurity and access through this farm share program. And you're giving it away and selling it and empowering all kinds of people. So thank you very much for being with us. Do you want to say a little bit more about your background as far as an introduction goes?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for showing that. Yeah. I came to this, I was a first year farmer last year. I came in with a background in permaculture, which is a type of regenerative design framework. I have a couple of certifications in that. I lived in California for about 10 years, where I did landscape design build. I worked in some gray water, rainwater, worker-owned cooperative. That could be a mouthful. So design build, landscape design build. I started my own worker-owned co-op 3 years before I left. That was in ecological landscaping. I have what I thought would be a good background to get into farming, and I'll say it's definitely like a whole nother world, which I really deeply enjoyed, and I love all the challenges that it brings. And I just love connecting with people who love plants. It's really a wonderful community. So I'm happy to share more about what Raleigh City Farm does, and more specifically what we're doing to just get ready for the winter. It's fall, y'all, and I'm so happy it's here. The summer was hot. And so, me and my interns are grateful for the break in the weather.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. Well, yeah. So give us a little bit of background on how the Raleigh City Farm was started. How did you get that much land? First of all, how much land is it? It looks pretty big.
It's actually quite small. It's just under an acre.
Oh,
We're right out, I would say we're downtown Raleigh. We're in the Mordecai neighborhood. And if anyone's familiar with the area, we're close to William Peace College. We're right across the street from the baseball field there.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so just under an acre, but how did you secure just under an acre? How did you get that land?
The farm's been there for over 10 years. That land is leased. It used to be a vacant lot, and it kind of came together through a neighborhood initiative. And when I first came on board, they had just finished shifting their business model from something that wasn't working so well. And so 2020 was the first year that they had an actual farm manager that was stewarding the site. And I came on in the beginning of 2021. But prior to that, they had gone through this model of wanting to be a nonprofit that was supporting existing farm businesses and providing essentially space and services to them to help their business succeed. But what they found was like the site itself wasn't really being stewarded in the way that they had wanted it to. So that beautiful aerial shot that you showed that's on the website was from 2020, when the site really began to take shape, become more formalized, where the field got developed. We have a high tunnel that we grow in that got a whole new plastic sheeting on it. The greenhouse is a work in progress as well. It's a place that we grow in, and that interior spaces become increasingly more important for us to grow. Yeah, that's our high tunnel right there.
Nice, beautiful.
Yeah, to grow year round. And so we really begin to move. We still do a couple of what we call blocks in the field. One block is essentially 8 of these beds that you see right there. So we do 8 blocks or 16 beds that are 50 feet each, about 2.5 feet wide, that are out in the field. So for the winter time, in any hard freezes, we do have to plan to cover those with floating row covers, which we have. And then the greenhouse is a little bit more insulated as well, but it is not heated, right? So neither one of our structures that we grow in are heated, which, it's definitely a step up from being outside. There is a little bit more protection, but things are still at risk of, being frozen a little bit in there. You could see that on the right that we have some of our late cherry tomatoes that are coming in beautifully. We're growing Swiss chard. We're growing 3 times radishes, lettuce, carrots, like all of your staple fall stuff.
Are you able to grow the winter in this greenhouse or no?
Say it one more time for me.
Are you able to grow throughout the winter in the greenhouse?
We do grow year round, yeah, in both the high tunnel and the greenhouse. So we just planted in there the beginning of September, so a little bit late for the fall crop that I wanted, but that's going to take us through into January. And since I've been on site, that high tunnel has been in production full time. So we grow we grow all year in all of our spaces.
So what zone is Raleigh in? What growing zone?
It's 7B. Yeah.
Okay.
North Carolina is changing though. It's like it ranges from 6B through there are some places, a small amount of places that are now apparently like 8A. With climate change kind of coming into the mix, but 7B, 7A is really typical of our area.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. So you have this formerly vacant 1 acre lot. How long did it take to develop it to have it be to the stage where it's at now?
Yeah. So, I would say that it was up until 2019 that it was a little bit more scattered, right? They did acquire.
When did you get it? Did you get it into 2018 or 20? How long did you have it till?
How long did we have
How many years did it take to sort of get it to the stage that it's at now?
Well, from when it started, so it's been about, I think, 11 years. It really,
okay.
Like most of the development that you see that's happened on the site was like within 2 years. So starting in 2020, right, when the first farm manager got hired, the field finally got organized. The high tunnel got more organized. The greenhouse had been acquired like formally by the previous farm manager, and then we started doing things in there. So it was the previous years, the spaces had been stewarded, but not on a full-time basis. These farmers had their own properties that they were growing on, in addition to this site. So,
and how many people did it take in the past 2 years? How many people involved in actually having it cultivated to the way that it is now? How many people would you say like really focused on it, not just part-time, but really focused on it?
Well, I can't speak for before there was a farm manager, right? Because it was very much
no, just in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
So how many
for
people?
The past 2 years, since we've had a farm manager, he's had team. He started with well, I could speak for myself, which I've had myself, the executive director, who is like part-time on site. She does a lot of the horticulture and like the bouquets and things like that for our farm stand. I manage all of our production spaces. And then I have 3 rounds of interns, and I usually will get 3 people at 20 hours a week who are with me. This year we were a bit short staffed, so I had 2.5 in the beginning, in the spring and the summer time. And then this fall I have 4 people, all at 20 hours a piece. And then I also, and they're at 20 hours, I'm at 30 hours a week.
So how many people is that total? I'm just
Have
trying
a
to,
wine and weeds. Sorry, you cut out a little bit.
yeah, it's cutting out a little bit. So how many people, is that like maybe 6 people?
That's yeah. So right now we have 6, yeah, 4 essentially interns, 2 our fellows, 2 our interns, my assistant, myself, 6 that are really like running the site, plus Lisa, our executive director, who does a lot of our horticulture stuff, like in our yeah, in our flower beds.
I just want people to know, because when they, like they look at it and see how abundant it is, that there wasn't 200 people or 2,000 people. It was
Yeah.
a handful of people. And that's what most people say, like Margaret Mead says, it's only a handful of people that, right, can change the world, a small group of people. And that's all it takes to start something like this. And so we really commend you for all the work that you're putting into it.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now on the farm to prepare for fall, to prepare for winter in the fall? What kind of things are you doing in the fall garden now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, we're kind of putting to bed the last of the summer stuff, right? So we've taken out most of our tomatoes. We're getting the last of the eggplant in, still getting peppers. And so we're really, beginning to turn beds quite a bit of our summer produce, and letting those go slowly and changing those beds over. And then we've recently planted, as I've mentioned, our fall stuff. Usually we try to give about on average about 8 weeks before first frost, which is November 4th. And so we started planting, beginning of September, to get everything in the ground to be ready for that. A ton of mulching, I actually just signed up for something that residential homeowners can sign up for too. It's called Chip Drop. If you haven't heard of it, they're awesome.
We recommend that all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, I just signed up for them, and I got my first delivery within like, I think 24 hours of making a request. I love that you could specify no logs. That's huge. So, we got a really nice. So we're doing a ton of mulching. It's about that time where our mulch has like gone down quite a bit. So in between all of our rows, our main pathways, we do use cardboard on our site quite a bit. So we put the cardboard for weed suppression, and then we put mulch on top of it. And over time, that cardboard, of course, breaks down, but just that layering is a of building soil over time. And so in the interim, it does the garden to be able to withstand things like, like we had some washout in the beds happen from the storm that recently came through, but we were pretty well prepared for that with the mulching we had, and we had some makeshift dams at the end of our beds to try to keep all of our soil in. But of course, like heavy rains is something just to always be mindful of in your gardens, especially if you have like in-ground beds and stuff like that. Yeah, just kind of getting our field ready. So, I'm kind of shaking the dust off of that stuff, and just having all of your equipment ready to go to be used for when the frost really hits.
Right.
Someone, I'm just seeing the chat here. Someone asked me if I teach farming. I do not. I mean, I technically teach to my interns. So if you are one of my interns, I do teach farming.
Right. You said you're turning the beds and changing them over. Can you explain in better detail what
Sure.
that exactly means?
Right. Thank you for that. Yeah. So for us, we are a low no-till operation. So we don't use really any heavy machinery at all on the site. It's mostly all human powered, if you will. And we try to disturb the soil as little as possible. Of course, there is some disturbance when we are pulling plants out, but what we try to do if we're, say, taking broccoli out, which has a pretty intense stem, is we cut it as low to the ground as possible to leave the roots in. And we just kind of let that sit for a little bit. And then we, when we're ready to really fully turn the beds over, let me back up. So we take what we call the crop residue out, leave the roots in. We cover everything with a little bit of compost. We water it, and then we use what's called a silage tarp, which is essentially like a tarp that doesn't let any light in. And then we cover the beds for about, depending on the season, how hot it can get, anywhere from like 3 to 4 weeks. Microbial activity that's in the soil to begin to just break down any of the crop residue that's remaining in there. And so that's the way we let the beds kind of rest in between planting. And then when we're ready to plant the beds, we uncover everything, add more compost, add our amendments in, and then we essentially, prepare the beds to be planted. So that looks like really, organic compost, amendments, which we use alfalfa meal, we use feather meal, we use an elemental sulfur because we have really high pH on the farm. So we use sulfur to address that long term. And that's really all we use on an ongoing basis as far as fertilization goes. And then we mix in those amendments with a tool that's called a tilther, which is the only mechanical tool we have. It's like a mini tiller, if you will. So it only is intended to mix the amendments, but not really turn the soil. But the way that we aerate the soil, which is a necessity, is with something called a broad fork. And so we go through and we deeply aerate, we mix in the amendments, we get all the beds nice and nice and straight is the word I want to use, but like nice and level. And then we're able to direct seed into those beds or transplant, which is what we did quite a bit of in the summertime. Pretty much everything that we planted or transplanted into the farm, we started from seed.
So can we ask you about your compost system there? Are you working with outside sources to help feed your compost, or is it just from your garden?
So what we do is we get compost from Compost Now. If y'all have ever heard about them. So they collect food scraps from residential homeowners, from local businesses, and that gets taken to a commercial compost facility. And people are able, they pay into the Compost Now service, which has they provide you with essentially a compost trash can that you have on your site, which they then routinely collect. And you can decide where you want your compost to go to, like essentially, if there's a nonprofit that you want to donate your compost to. And so people choose us, and then we build up a bank. So I recently have gotten 7 yards in my bank of compost, which we then get delivered to our site. And then we really just pay the delivery fee, which is $50. So it's quite good in that way.
And this is just a Raleigh business, Compost Now?
That's a great question. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
We have a question if the alfalfa meal is organic.
It is, yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, because that could be GMO, right? According to what's going on in the world right now. So Frankie's asking, Maria, do you get much business from university students? Here in Ann Arbor, there's quite a problem with food insecurity among the students. The botanical garden has a greenhouse just for them and uses lots of sweat equity. Do you get
much business from university students? Like university,
like needing food?
Is that the question?
Do you donate much food to university students? I think is what she
means.
I
see what they're saying. Not directly. No, we don't. But that's a really good, that's something that I didn't realize was like a gap, right?
I went to a fundraiser at our local UNC Asheville University, and they were talking about, there's quite a percentage of kids that are food insecure at the universities. They get scholarships, right? They're going to and they don't have the funds. They live in their car. There are a lot of college students that live in their cars.
Yeah.
And they have issues with getting food. So just another area to, maybe to perhaps invite them to work on the farm, and then able to get food from there.
Mm-hmm. That's a great suggestion. It's something I'll definitely.
So I found it on their website. Actually, it's in there in Asheville, Raleigh, Durham, Atlanta, Asheville, Charleston, and Cincinnati is Compost Now. So this should be a national program, especially if it's organic and chemical.
To answer the question from Cami, we do make our own compost as well. We have a pretty robust compost system that we use.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Does anybody else have any growing food, any type of growing food questions for Maria. Now's your chance. You've got an
Oh,
extra.
it's me again from Raleigh.
Yes.
Here I am. Zan, and everybody, I just wanted to tell everybody that when I was a kid in grade school, starting in kindergarten, our school had a gardening program, and every student had his own garden plot that was fenced in, and they grew crops during the summertime and harvested them in the fall and took the stuff home. And we planted the seedlings in a greenhouse in the springtime and then transplanted them into the garden plant. And that was all the way from kindergarten through grade 6.
Wow.
Now, why schools aren't doing that now, I don't know, but they probably should be, because we learned an awful lot doing that.
So you did that for from first grade to 6th grade.
Correct.
That's incredible. So you brought home food that you could eat with your
Yeah.
family that you
And I
grew-
remember the first thing that I harvested when I was in the first grade was radishes. So
Nice.
they've been a favorite ever since then.
That's
So,
great. Was that a public school that you went to, Gary?
it was in Cleveland. It was Miles School on Miles Avenue. And as far as I know, that garden is still there across from the school.
Was it a public school or a private school?
Yes, no, it was public school.
Wow. Wonder why we don't have the resources to pay for that at public schools now, huh? Where's the money all going to?
Maybe it's because the big agricultural industrial complex doesn't want anybody to do that, because then they'll find
Right.
out they can grow their own food.
Yes. Yep. They'll be too
That
empowered.
is the long and the short of it.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Annie, did you have a question? I think you unmuted before there. Thank you, Gary, for adding that.
Yeah, our community garden plot, he doesn't want us putting nightshades, eggplants and peppers or tomatoes into the compost pile and wants us to pack out our own nightshades. And then we're supposed to pull out our nightshade between December and March. And then some people don't want us to put oxtails in the compost pile, but
Okay.
the gardener said, you know, nitrogen's nitrogen, and he doesn't mind weeds in the compost, but some people even go as far as not to putting invasive weed into their compost.
Yeah. I haven't heard this thing about not putting nightshades in the compost, and I'm curious about that, but I will address the weeds in the compost. We have been putting weeds in the compost system, right? By nature of having a lot of volunteers on site, Wine and Weeds, we have a community work day once a month and Wine and Weeds every week, you know. It tends to get into our compost, and we see the result of that. You know, we have done a test bed where we've used the compost that we've made on one of our beds, and it's just completely riddled with weeds. And that, you know, is something that we are working out at this time. We're creating some space to have just a weeds only pile, where we're essentially going to have 2 spots. We'll build up one pile, and then we'll cover that when it gets too high, and then we'll start on another pile, and that'll be for weeds. And then we're going to have 2 more piles. That's going to be for like thicker produce, which is essentially like tomato stems, eggplant, bushels, like all of that. Anything that takes a long time to break down, anything that's kind of woody, but that aren't like trees or will have that same system going on. But I'm curious, why don't they want the nightshades in the compost?
He said it's because some kind of fungus, and that or some kind of disease where if you just don't if you have them out of the ground and don't put them in the compost, it doesn't have this virus or fungus or something.
I'm definitely gonna look into that then, because we don't want that to be a thing. That includes like tomatoes and eggplant, like the fruit themselves as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
this
got it.
tomato, eggplants, and peppers.
Sure.
So they say, I'm actually kind of looking it up right now, and they said that if you have a healthy compost pile, that they'll generate a microherd capable of decomposing any diseased plants. That tomato plants are, you know, often rife with disease at the end of the fall. And I do remember, I think Mark Doodla said a few meetings ago that he would just I throw everything in. The only year I didn't was when I had a whitefly infestation. I threw everything out.
He's
But-
saying he says compost should get to 160 degrees to eliminate the viable seeds. And yeah, so I guess if you're getting it to 160 degrees too, will that eliminate bacteria and fungus and things like that? I mean, if it gets hot enough, right, it's gonna kill it off.
I
don't
mean,
know.
there are some things that definitely that can survive some of that heat. But yeah, I mean, the question of getting compost, to the proper heat level is also, a question and requires pretty vigilant monitoring. We do have like a compost thermometer, and then we're getting a new leader for our
Cut out.
quite knowledgeable, so we're hoping that's really going to help and addressing.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? You cut out. You got a compost thermometer, and then what did you say?
And then we have a new volunteer who's very knowledgeable about composting. And so I'm actually really excited to have her come on board and to help us, just tune it in a little bit more, right? Because it's not only like killing off certain things that you want to kill off, but like there are certain like bacteria and microorganisms that exist only within at certain degree levels, right? And so you want to be able to have access to the full range of those to have your compost properly break down. And so, the level of monitoring that our system requires, I know it's been a bit lackluster. We've just wanted to just try to keep all of our green material on site. That's been the real aim to date. But we are now in a process of refinement. So all of these curiosities are, I'm really grateful to just like hear like all of these ideas that I'm going to be packing in and then sharing it with the compost team and make sure that we address them.
Good. Okay. So I want to do two things. One, I want to recap what you said about turning the beds over. And then two, I want to ask a question about putting a greenhouse in. So one, do I have this correct? So first you chop the plants down. So you leave the roots in the ground, like for tomatoes or broccoli or whatever it is, right? You chop it down and you let it sit for a while. You put compost on top, you water it, and then you cover it with something. You have a particular type of sheet to cover it with. We could do cardboard, we could do mulch, right? You cover it, right?
You'd want to cover it with something that isn't going to let any light in. What we use is something called a silage tarp. And it's totally like completely dark. The type of environment you want to create is something where the earthworms feels like it's night all the time. So then they're working 24 hours to really, break down any of the remaining crop residue is really the goal.
And then how long do you let that sit on there before you take it off?
Depending on the season, you want it to get, warm enough that things break down, right? So in the summertime, you could probably do as little as like, that's it right there. As little as like 2 weeks, we on average do 3 weeks. Winter
now
time
in the fall.
longer.
So now in the fall, would you leave it on for 3 weeks now and then take it off for during the winter?
Well, what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be cover cropping. So any of the beds that we turn over at this point, we're going to be cover cropping through the winter time. So, as just like a rule of low to no till is to cover your beds, whether that's with a landscape fabric, silage tarp. And we want to actually put a cover crop in so that way we can put that green material essentially back into the soil once we get into getting the beds ready for spring. So most everything we're going to be cover cropping more likely than not with clover, just because it's easy to turn over. Nothing that's like too hardy, which then would require tilling, which we want to avoid.
Right. So, okay. So that's when you let it break it down, then you mix in with the tilther and then the broad fork, you aerate and you direct seed the clover or something like that. Okay, great. Then my next question is, because I know it's 9 o'clock now and we want to let you go, but I have a personal question. We just got a greenhouse. It's like one of the ones with the plastic cover type things, it's, is it too late to set up that greenhouse and put starts in there of like kale or different greens to grow during this? I'm in 7A. I'm in Western North Carolina. Is it too late to do things like that? Because we didn't start in September. We didn't plant seeds and start something in September. Is it too late for that now?
I don't think so. I think it's cool enough where you're at that you could even direct seed at this point, depending on how you're growing things, direct seeding, radishes, arugula, kale. You
You broke
You know,
out.
like broccoli or
She's on-
cabbage.
she's on.
Radishes, arugula, kale, broccoli.
Well, I would say broccoli and cabbage. It's probably too late
too-
to do
okay.
like indoor starts on those.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, just because it'll take too long to get them into the ground. Yeah, but all the quick stuff, right? You could probably
Beets.
still sow like, yeah, beets and even like carrots, mustard, turnips, like all that stuff you could direct sow if you don't have like a whole lot of space, you know,
Okay.
that you're.
Yeah, it's like 25 by 10, I think. It's pretty
You can always do starts of lettuce. Those go up very quickly.
lettuce.
Yeah, if you wanted to. Is it like a little? It's a little greenhouse.
I think
I
it's
think there's like a real structure you walk into.
I think it's 25 by 10. It's
Oh
decent.
yeah, it's a good, decent.
Yeah, yeah.
Really decent. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna have it cover two of the beds that we've had in the garden. We're gonna put it at the end of the garden where it's covering two of the beds that was
Yeah.
growing corn before, and we
Got it.
figured, put some compost down and put stuff in there. So
Yeah.
yeah, great.
I still think go for it, like I would go for it. And if anything, like a lot of that stuff is really cold hardy. And they can deal with, as long as you have something to cover them when there's like a hard frost, I think you should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's 9:03, so we want to let you go and appreciate you. Everybody, you can go to the Raleigh City Farms and put the link in the box here if you want to find out more and learn how to start something like.
Yeah, she's making me, looking at her beds, and it's making me kind of rethink how my garden is set up. So,
That's the thing I love about garden. You can always learn something new. There's always something new to learn. There's no one way to do it, and people just connect over gardening. It's just so fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really fun crowd. Thank you so much for having me, everyone. Yeah, feel free to check out the website, and if you're ever in the area, come and visit us. We'd love to have you.
We will. Thank you so much.
I'm
Maria.
here.
Take care. Yeah, you too.
Dan, I thought you were in California. You said you were in Western North Carolina now?
Yeah, I moved. Yeah, I moved to Western North Carolina. I'm near
When
Asheville.
when did you do that?
2 years ago. So we got a 6-acre
Oh
farm.
my God, I didn't even know that. I thought you were in
Yeah.
California. Here
No,
I am thinking that, well, the reason she's having these calls so late is because she's on the West Coast.
no. Well, this was the time that we used to have it. So we thought we should keep it the same time.
which brings up another topic.
Which brings up another question. How would y'all be with us having these calls an hour earlier? We feel like we're getting old and tired. Yeah.
So how do the people how do the people on the West Coast feel about a 4 o'clock?
Is that too early for you guys? And anybody in the West Coast? That's too.
No,
What do you think? Unmute yourself. I want to hear from you. Is 4 o'clock too early for you in California?
It actually works better just because of my schedule. It works better.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Pacific time? Want to chime in on this?
I see people saying that's great from Pacific time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to do it 7 Eastern time for Pacific time. And we might keep the calls 1 hour going to 9:30, unless there's lots of questions and, people have a lot of questions about gardening. I think we might shorten it to 1 hour, maybe just during the fall season. And then back in the spring and summer's time when there's a lot more, gardening going on, we might keep the extra half an hour.
I hope it works for Mark Doodla.
Yeah, Mark, is it a little bit earlier? Does that work okay for you? We love having you on these calls. Are you available, Mark? He's probably doing something.
He's asleep.
He's a multitasker. I think he can handle it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, hang on 1 second, Ann. Gary, you were gonna saying something?
Are you in Asheville or near Elkin?
No, I'm right near Asheville. Right now, I'm in Asheville. Yep.
Okay.
So if you're ever in this area, come visit.
Oh, I just went through there last week when I was driving to Ohio. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, we love very good. Lots of rain here, so we can grow much more easily than ever in California. Poor California.
Yeah, lots of rain.
Oh, poor California. Yeah, not getting rain. All right.
Speaking of Mark
Well,
Doodla,
just so you guys all know, Raleigh was voted one of the top 2 cities in the world for quality of life, and Cary, which is a little suburb just southwest of here, is also the highest per capita income city in the country. So
Wow,
there you go.
interesting. Good area to live in then. Very good. Okay. Anne, you were saying, talking about Mark Dudla, but he's
So
gone.
yeah, so I mean, this was taken over a week ago, but this popped up in like 4 days. This was one of my beds that I put my cereal rye in.
Oh, I gotta get my cereal rye. Darn it. Okay.
And so I sent it to Mark and he said to reseed the bare areas, which I have done. And I have so many squirrels though, so I've actually had to cover these up with some remade till they get going, but they're doing really well. I mean, this stuff I was shocked how fast it came up. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. I have 3 beds like this.
That's great. Good job. You're actually doing what Mark Dudla told you to do. Woohoo.
Yes, I'm a good listener sometimes.
Very good. All right. Anybody have any questions for Mark? We were asking, would this be okay with you to have this call an hour earlier? We just love that you've been, yes, that's good. Okay. That's a thumbs up, I see. Yep. Okay. And Mark, we want to ask you to be an official advisor for the Neighborhood Food Network. Can we put you on the website as an official advisor? We can talk about it later if you want. Yeah.
With
Okay.
a,
with you?
with a link
Yes.
to Doodle Farms. I don't think he'd mind
Yes,
that.
of course. That makes sense, right, everybody? Mark has been an exceptional contribution to these calls. We really appreciate it. All right. So does anybody have any questions about gardening that either Mark or Ann or anybody else on this call can answer?
So next week,
Well, hang on. Can we ask first? Does anybody have any questions? Right now? Not right now.
Just
Okay.
a comment, you know, the lime and the sulfur that you mix in the soils to control the acidity or alkalinity, that also controls the fungus spores. So
Oh, okay. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
and if you have issues with that, it's suggested that you send your soil in for soil test to your local extension service. And I do believe they have some home tests that you can also order. So you're not overdoing it one way or the other. I've been listening to several books on that. So it's a delicate dance, but it seems to work.
Okay.
But yeah, we have Joe Pesci on the call with us, and next week we're going to be talking about a seed swapping app that he's developing that we're working on him with, and it's very exciting. So we can put our seeds on there and we can start sharing them with each other.
That's great.
So we have to put some finishing touches on it, and next week we will be launching that.
Excellent. Which reminds me that you want to gather your seeds before the frost hits. Okay, like basil seeds, things like that. So if you've got things growing right now and you know the frost is going to come in a week or two or whatever, in a month, make sure you gather your seeds first. And all you do is you just pick the tops off those, where the seeds are, you put it in a paper bag and you shake it. And then you take those seeds and you put them in a ideally not a plastic bag, a paper envelope, right? So that it can breathe a little bit and label it. And then you can save those seeds very easily. So,
yeah, I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have kind of the whole thing is our seeds that I'm saving back here.
Yep.
Different seeds require different ways to save them. So you can actually look that up. Certain seeds you want to ferment and then dry. Other seeds you can just dry.
We'll be putting more of that on the website, right? And
yes, it's so much fun. It just brings a whole new element to gardening in the fall. Instead of being like bummed out that everything's starting to look crappy and dying, I'm running around going, oh, seeds.
Yep. Yeah. And once you save those seeds, it's like your little treasures that are waiting, your little babies that are waiting to be planted in the spring. And Anne always shares them too, sends them out, sends her basils to me. So your basil seeds are growing in my garden now. And now I'm going to be saving them. I'm going to have thousands of them and I'm going to be able to share, right? So thousands and thousands of seeds are created by one plant. So there's no need for genetic modification, folks. We have an abundance. Mother Nature gives an abundance. And we have an abundance of seeds to give and to share. So I'm excited to see about this seed swapping app that you guys are working on.
Yes, it's he's done a really great job on it. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to start closing up this part of the call. But before I do, I just want to say We've had 229 people across the country. I think probably over 40 something states now. When we only had 145, it was 36 states. People that are interested in starting a neighborhood food network in their area. And I want to let you know that there are people who have done this. They've started one, Carol from California started a Facebook group and had 40 people on it in a couple of days. Now she's got over 60 people. And she says 3 times a week now, she is meeting with people in her neighborhood that she's never met with before. They are swapping peaches or apples. They're learning how to can things together. They're trading, then they're swapping what they've canned. She's getting free raspberry bushes. She's helping people with weeding, connecting with her neighbors like she has never connected before. And I want just to remind you that this is what's possible for you. And many people, completely understand it's human to be adverse, to feel adverse to meeting your neighbors. Like I get the fear and the concern that there may be with, what if I meet my neighbors and they're crazy? Then I have to pass their house every day thinking about how crazy they are, right? Like there's just adversity that people have to connecting with neighbors. They can anyway. Maybe none of you feel like this, but that can come up. But also, I just want to remind you that when you meet your neighbors, there can also be wonderful surprises. You can meet wonderful, kind, compassionate people who have interests that are just like, I think I've probably told you, when our neighbors have alpacas, they're like giant stuffed animals. They're the most adorable things I've ever seen. And it's just so lovely to see them, and one's a pilot and he talks about his travels. And, so anyway, we've met some really cool people through doing the Neighborhood Food Network. And I really encourage you to download the flyers that are on our website and go pass them out. And, it's never too late to start. And you can say, we're going to have meetings now to get planned and organized for the spring. Right.
I've already talked to people. There's actually a person across the street who everybody thinks is crazy. And I spent over 45 minutes in their backyard last week talking about how we can prep their yard now to start growing in the spring. So food's a great equalizer. Everybody eats it. And it's, I haven't had a conversation start with, no, everybody's always very positive.
Yeah, everybody's very interested in it. And one lady, and just in case you haven't heard the story, or maybe you're new to the call, one lady in our area in Asheville said, I don't think I could get my neighbors in this very affluent neighborhood too excited about growing food for food security, right? Very, very wealthy people feel very secure in their food resources because they've got basement stocked or whatever. She said, but I think I could get them interested in a charitable interest by adopting a food bank. So if you live in an area where you think a charitable interest will work better, or maybe in addition to what you're doing, you could connect with your local food bank. And what Moms Across America wants to do is to get a significant funding for the coming year for like our real launch. Like this has been our pilot program. You guys have all been teaching us what we need to do. And Anne's been adding stuff to the website, and it's just going to keep getting better and better. But if we could get some funding to have some actual staff and to pay garden experts in each zone, we could have a call like this and then in breakout rooms with the 8 different garden zones. So yes, wouldn't that be great? So that you would know exactly what you need to do right now in your garden zone, very specifically. So we want to be able to pay, like part-time fee, salaries to people, those garden experts, to be able to be available to people. And one of those things that we want to do, I think I just lost my train of thought. What was I talking about just before this?
Oh my God.
All right.
Somebody,
It's a senior moment.
Senior moment. Sorry, I forgot. What was I talking about just before this? The garden zones.
You're not even a senior and you're having senior
having
moment.
having experts, having staff, having
Yes,
by
and-
experts by zone.
Food banks.
Food
Food
banks.
banks. Thank you. Yes. So the food banks, we want to raise enough money to be able to have signs. When you're driving down the highway and you see this highway with, the next whatever mile was adopted by whatever the Knights of Columbus or whatever, you know what I mean? And they some organization has adopted that highway and they keep it clean. Well, what if that street, your street, could be it would say, Charles Street Neighborhood Food Network growing for Mana Food Bank, like that. Asheville Mana Food Bank. Wouldn't that be awesome? That street could adopt a food bank. It would be a badge of honor. It would raise real estate. It would create community connection and drive for growing food. And so anyway, yes, I love the idea of supporting a food bank too. And the homeless people in your area could get actual real food, not just, GMO processed oils in peanut butter and salting glyphosate covered wheat crackers. Yes. See, wouldn't that be beautiful? This is what's got to happen next year, folks. We got to have these all across the country, metal signs that we're able to put, but they got to earn it. They've got to donate like 1,000 pounds of food to the food bank. Don't you think? I think so. And every year you get a little sticker or something on there that you've re-upped, like your registration for your car, right? So we've got to get the food banks working together. So if anybody wants to volunteer, I actually, because of the school testing, I have had probably somebody almost every hour for the past couple of days say, I want to volunteer for Moms Across America. So one of these next calls, we're going to have a volunteer call and get people and, really have people start coordinating things like connecting all the food banks with local, in local hubs so that we can do this in their area. So wait, somebody's saying I'm doing this in my community. Everyone has been very welcoming, excited. We had our first meeting the end of October. Thank you so much for doing that. Whoops,
And I love Frankie's comment. The best gardeners have a significant amount of crazy.
Yeah, we all do because we're so connected to the earth. So we're fed up with all the capitalist stuff going on. So we that makes us all crazy. So we're connected to the earth though. Okay. I haven't been able to make these calls for a while. I'm so excited to hear about your plans to expand the food network, neighborhood food network. Very good. Thank you, Elaine. And Frankie loves the idea of supporting the food banks. Any amount donated is good. How would a minimum benefit? Okay. That's true. But I want to have a goal for people. I don't want to say that you just get a sign up if somebody's donated 10 pounds of food. I don't know. I think maybe it would be good to have a goal. We could talk about that though. You give us your feedback, give us your thoughts. I just think it's nice to have a goal for, people earn it. Like when they say that the Democratic Party or the Knights of Columbus have adopted a highway, they have to give a certain amount of money to put that sign up so that you can pay people to clean up the garbage on that highway, right? There's a certain measurable quantitative thing attached.
Oh, I thought that the Knights of Columbus just went out there and cleaned up the streets and then they got a sign. I didn't know.
Not necessarily. I would have to ask about that, but I think they donate a certain amount of money so that, you don't think so? You think they do donate a certain amount of money so that they can pay people to do it. And I think they get community service people to do it.
Oh.
I think they're the Orange Fest.
The state roads in North Carolina are cleaned up by inmates from the prison system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they need to send some of them my way because the north side of Milwaukee is terrible. I'm constantly picking up garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't understand who's raising these children that end up becoming adults or teenagers that are throwing trash out of their car. I don't understand. They must have been raised by wolves because there's nobody that I know.
I had a friend in the 70s throw a Coke can out of the car while I was in the car, and I made him, this is the 70s, and I made him turn around and go pick it up. He thought I was absolutely nuts. But I was just like, don't you remember the commercial with the crying Indian?
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm so glad. All right, guys. Well, we're going to close out this call. I really appreciate your time. We're going to start having the calls an hour earlier, and they'll probably just be an hour. But we'll be flexible if there's lots of questions and everything. But we really appreciate you being on these calls. And please go to Neighborhood Food Network and initiate the Neighborhood Food Network on your street and let us know how it goes. And come back to the calls if you have questions or if you want to share how it's going. Okay, because whatever you have to share will inspire other people. And I don't care if you don't think you look good or if you didn't do it right or if you're frustrated, we will learn from everything. Okay. If you feel like you had a breakdown, if you feel like you didn't do something right, this group is meant to support you in that. Okay. So there's no bad or wrong in this. We're all just learning how to do this together. Okay.
And send me pictures.
One last thing.
Pictures to Ann.
Raleigh permits chickens in everybody's backyard if you have the room. Anybody?
Apparently, everybody should live in Raleigh. Thank you, Gary.
They have chickens. You can have
I
chickens.
can have 4 chickens, and one of my neighbors that have chickens have a lot more than 4. So my next goal is to have a chicken coop.
Yeah, do it. Eggs are awesome. They're very good.
Yeah, lumber's really
Some people may
expensive.
argue with me about that, but grass-fed pasture raised eggs are good. And if you ever get in a crunch with, income and not having a lot of money. They're a very good source of protein. So, all right. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Appreciate you. Take care.